The talk topic is visual affair, the art of visual storytelling. And I'm going to start with Mr. Mickey, okay, he's getting wired, sorry. Editorial director, Paper Magazine, New York, and also runs his own column called Fat and All That. Moving on next with Mr. Sanjay. Sanjay Garg is the founder of Raw Mango. Please welcome him, guys. Next is our moderator for this talk, Aaliya Amrin. She's worked as a content producer, ex-GQ, also works on several other brands making content. Welcome, Aaliya. Next we have Samir Parekh, international photographer. Welcome, Samir. Next we have Mr. Akshay Chiaki. He's a Bollywood celebrity stylist. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for that very nice introduction, Smitha. I think there's a little bit more we can say about this very esteemed panel. It's kind of like a power panel. I feel really, really cool right now. I'm not gonna lie. This is like the highlight. So Mickey is obviously the editorial director, as you mentioned. His writing has appeared in the New York Times, out in German Vogue. He's an active commentator on the New York social and fashion scene, as we know and love, and appears as a cultural commentator, lifestyle expert, and fashion guru. And that still doesn't do it justice, so that's just like all I could fit in. That's all I was allowed to say.
Thank you.
Sanjay isn't your average designer. He hails from a small village in Rajasthan, and he doesn't believe in fashion shows and works with traditional weavers. The founder of Raw Mango, a fashion entrepreneur whose designs have exhibited in Modern Art, New York, and Victoria and Albert Museum, as well in London. Fantastic. Samir, you've grown up with the folks and has been taking pictures ever since. You've won the prestigious awards in New York, everything in Los Angeles. You're extremely renowned and you make us very, very proud. You've lived and you've worked in multiple markets, LA, London, New York, and Mumbai, to name a few. Akshay, as we all know, is a fashion stylist, loved and adored by Bollywood. He's also a conceptual fashion designer. He has showcased in Atlantic Fashion Week in Canada for 2 seasons, and he's also reviewed by thefashionmagazine.com, Vogue India, etc. Again, I don't think this does justice at all to this panel, but we're just getting started. So when we're talking about visual affair, I feel like visual storytelling is a buzzword today. So we all have our various definitions of it. It means different things to a lot of different people, but I think to keep it short, let's say we can sell a white t-shirt today for 100 USD, and nobody knows why, but that's because we're selling the concept behind it, and a lot of work goes behind that, right? Because we all have white t-shirts, but why are we still spending 100 USD? It's because we're buying into the branding, we're buying into the story. So I just want to start by leading the conversation with Mickey. Just because you're to my far most right. What do you think it is that people have caught on to, and why it is that a t-shirt that's 100 USD can sell today like that?
That's a very good question. I think what we wear really says a lot about who we are and who we hope to be. So often when you're buying a t-shirt, you're saying, do you want to be hip-hop? Do you want to be glamorous? Do you want to be international? Do you want to be artsy, craftsy? So you're kind of trying to send out a message to the world about who you are. So also hopefully you might just think that's a good t-shirt that fits you well and is socially responsible. So I think everything that we do, everything that we buy involves branding in some way in a visual story. And particularly in the day of Instagram and social media now, I think we really want to go on a journey. And I find like at Paper, something that is something that does better for us than anything is if a very famous woman changes her hairstyle. And that sounds very basic and stupid, but like if we shoot Priyanka Chopra with a hair look she's never had, her fans go crazy. I don't know why, that just seems to be the case. So people love transformation. People love to see people in a way they haven't been seen before, so they like to go on a sort of visual journey.
Awesome. Do you want to kind of add on to that? Obviously, as a photographer, you're behind the lens creating the story. So what is it to you?
This $100 business is like a touchy one. The last time I bought a $100 t-shirt was for someone that I was in love with when I was much younger, and I'm still trying to figure out why.
Yeah.
But like Mickey said, what's important to you?
Yeah.
How do you portray yourself? How do you expect people to perceive you? I guess in some subconscious way we're all chasing that. So I don't know. I couldn't add much to what he's saying because it's in that zone. There is no why or why not to it, and we go. It's impulsive as well. when you feel what you feel on the day that you're, buying that T-shirt. So it's like jeans, you spend up to $400, $500 on a pair of jeans. So, why ask why?
Yeah.
No clue. It's a feeling. Yeah. So.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. Now, Akshay, you're actually the man behind the styling of these T-shirts. So you're responsible for my extremely spendthrifty behavior. So what is it that goes into your process when you're building the story, and why is it important?
So I think it's not just about the fact that it's just a T-shirt. It's the fact that you're kind of selling the vision, you're kind of selling the aspiration, you're kind of selling the dream, like I was just telling you earlier. So it's really interesting because it may be just a white T-shirt, but is it an exclusive white T-shirt? Is it the only white T-shirt that exists? Is it the T-shirt that that particular celebrity is wearing and endorsing, and then somehow it adds value to this mundane item that everyone knows of? And there are people who put a lot of value to just a basic T-shirt at H&M, but then because it's a sustainable piece or because it's a H&M conscious collection, do we add value to it? And what is it that, how does it inject more and more to become worthy of being $100? So I think for me, the challenge all the time is that I'd like to change it up and just be like, it's fine if it's a Zara T-shirt, as long as it looks good and as long as you feel good, then we're good. So I think.
Awesome, awesome. And you obviously have a really key role. You've built a really unique brand that's been revered for multiple storytelling purposes. So how is it that you go into that process already knowing that I'm selling a story here, I'm not just selling a piece of fabric?
Well, I think as Mickey very well said, what you wear, you communicate where you are and what you are. And at the same time, everything communicate, and everything symbolize the motif you wear, or you do not wear a motif, or I have a short hair, or the girls have a long hair, or I have a piercing. So I tell that, I'm a boy, she's a girl, and I wear a jewelry, or he doesn't wear a jewelry, but Mickey is wearing one today. So even the communicating and not communication also is a communication. I'm not talking to you is a communication. So I've communicated that I don't want to talk to you, right? Yeah. So I think to me, when you talk about Instagram and social media, I know that is very in right now, and that is everyone looking up to it. But more than that, I really wanted to know that how do I communicate and what is that India and what is that visual language going to be for my country?
Right.
When we have so many magazines all over the world, if they are talking about a fashion, so what is our fashion going to be? Are we going to look like the same way what happens in Turkey or Lulaland or wherever? I mean, because certain things, we don't have any references. We don't have references for fashion. So where do we what do we think with that, what is the individuality, who am I, and what is that pehchan, that how do we create distinguish between, all of this madness where it's too much of information. So what is that really an Indian visual language? I think that's what we try to tell through the story.
Definitely, and there's so much that's connected to a piece of apparel today, right? So Akshay, do you feel like selling the concept has almost become more important than selling the piece of apparel, just in your experience as a stylist?
So, I mean, it's funny because it's constantly this dialogue between commerce and concept. Yeah. I went to a conceptual art school myself. I had to unlearn all the things that I knew about fashion. As I understood it, I always thought it was a ramp in a Paris Fashion Week, and that's what I wanted to do. But by the end of it, I realized that it was more about the idea, the message, where is it coming from, and why is it that you're doing what you're doing. So if you're not aware of that purpose in what you're spending all this time and energy and effort, then what is really the purpose behind doing it at all, right? So I think that's important to ask yourself constantly.
Yeah. So. Definitely, definitely. I have a question for Mr. Sanjay, but before we do that, could we actually cue some visuals, please? Awesome. The question I have for you is, how can designers, is it coming on?
Can we just go?
Yeah, I think, perfect, awesome. How can designers communicate effectively and make a distinction for themselves? And this is important to ask you because what you have is really, really unique. So I think a lot of us would love to know. What's in your head?
Well, as I said, we've been really questioning, with the current affair, as I said, that whatever happened, it happened 1,000 years of it. We wear cotton, or we wear a wool, or you wear a block printing, or kind of the motif, the size of the motif, the way the models are, the body type of it. As I say, the importance of the color, the importance of the story. Do we think that Indians are Oriental-looking people or they are not? I think there are many issues with many different campaigns we have gone through it. Say one of them, I think, is one of the photo right now, what you see is a pant shirt and a sari next to it, which was kind of a question that if you go to a wedding, any kind of a wedding, men's are okay with a pant and trouser, and women are still wearing ethnic saris. When you say that, for any kind of a sari, man is still okay to, suited as in a pant and shirt, but woman still has to, you won't really accept it in a pant and suit. So I really wanted to have that attention, and that's what that shoot talks about it. We had 12 or 13 couples in Bangalore. We actually documented that. So the sari was much more there, but I really wanted to show through that how much is different, but still we accept it. So there are many different things. This is one of them, the color picture. It's about the Raja Ravi Verma painting where the black and white were touched later on, and that's kind of imagery what we created with the models.
Lovely.
So I can go on. I mean.
No, and we'll let you. We'll come right back. So I think I want to kind of take this to the lens of a photographer, right? Because you're actually behind capturing what they're going to see, how they're going to view it, what they're going to feel when they see a picture, and then ultimately what they're going to connect to the brand. So what is your creative process like, and how do you go from a meeting with the client and the day on set when you go ahead and shoot these images? What's that process like for you?
So I think, first off, teamwork. You go to a meeting, be it editorial or be it an ad campaign, you understand the ethos of a magazine or a brand, understand what they stand for,
Totally.
The character of the brand or the magazine, and you set up an appropriate team, which becomes your backbone, and you bounce off each other, and that's what creates that magic. Aesthetics, what are they? They're just a set of principles, basically, which are applying to somebody's brand ethos. So those two really need to come together. The reality is that there is always a framework within which you have to bounce, and your style of work should be appropriate for whoever is.
I would love to answer. So one of the places what we've done, there's a particular campaign here. Before even any kind of visual imagery, we made kind of an audio. And I had so much to say, and the disagreement with the whole society right now, the way the brides are the short front of the palace wall. At the same time, they have to have certain kind of jewelry. I understand that is jewelry that of course you can't really control it, and one has to wear it, one has to, but there's no balance. When you say that if you wear that much jewelry, then you are the real bride, I think there's a problem. And if it's a problem, I don't know that I can go on and say this is my point of view, and how do I explain that? I think we made an audio where the character is here, and can we run it actually, is there? So I have a small video clip of it. So actually the character talks about with a friend, then what should I do? She said, well, you're getting married. Have you figured out your jewelry? I said, well, I figured out, but I don't really want to wear not wear it, jewelry to wear me, but I want to wear a jewelry. So we did that. It's kind of an audio without visual. So what I'm trying to say that if we are in a visual world and you think the visual literally the way we think visual, also not right. I think there are many ways of communicating through many experiences, and Instagram and Facebook are not, end of the world, first of all, and not even the visuals. I think what visual, they're going to be changed. It's an ongoing question. It's an ongoing process.
Definitely. I mean, that's why we have a whole world of experiential marketing and events where you can feel these emotions that we're trying to constantly connote with these brands, right? As you so fairly mentioned.
So I want to add it here as well. So in the whole campaign, we use 3 languages, and we call Undivided India. That whole 3 languages, I was inspired in when you go to road, the signage board, you have 3 languages. And very recently what happened in Bangalore Metro when they tried to write things in Hindi, so people opposed that Hindi is not from here, then why are you imposing on us? So I really thought of here, if here was India, or he was a Punjab today and wasn't part of India, so there'll be no role of a Hindi. So there was Urdu, there was English, and Gurmukhi. So very little, but I always wanted to convey not in terms of the layout, the language, the model, the way they shot, the light, the camera, the makeup. So I can go on. Once I wasn't very comfortable with the flash photography, and I thought the puristic is the natural light. I said, no, I have to come out from my comfort zone. Somewhere it was A's. There was an A's like 28. We had shot 75-year-old woman. And then there's a makeup, because I'm not aware at all about the makeup. If I'm not aware about the makeup, then what should I do? Because I don't know everything, the reference, the way it looks like outside of the world, I need to follow it. And there was a cloud people shoot. Literally, I took the color and I put on the face. I said, this is for me. This is cloud. So I think when you question that, then what it is really standard, the way they set, the way the models are shot, the way the fashion photographer are going to look through the lens, the way the model are going to act, the body language. These are many, many different issues I want to address with different projects.
Definitely.
And that is also the reason that different photographer, different time, you work with it continuously. I don't think so many things you can say in one shoot, but as I said, it's a very much ongoing process.
Definitely.
And I think it's important, like in this part, to as a visual person, like to look like somebody who looks at these things all the time. I think what was beautiful about this campaign, which she's talking about, was the fact that it was relatable. It was not the first time that everything just seemed this idea of aspiration that brands are selling, the idea of absolute decadence that everyone's used to looking at. I think what was stunning about this was that it was like, you know, anyone in this room, anyone on the street was able to relate to the fact that, it's just beautiful fabric. I need to just wear a small mantika and it was fine. Like it was a relatable, I think that's the whole game of Instagram nowadays, is what connects to you? What is it that you find that's exciting? What is it that appeals to you at a personal level? Because we may think we are all connected in this sort of global digital age, but you know, we are most likely, you know, sitting on our toilet seats looking at Instagram every morning or whatever it is that you're just like, oh, this is a moment that I really like. Like, this is what connects with me. Because we kind of are losing our identities a little bit. We're trying to find new identities. We're trying to embrace new identities. And I think in all of this dialogue, that's what is, I mean, at least I know with him, I mean, everyone against me here, like right now I'm just like, I feel really like honored to be on this panel with these legends, that all of them have given us imagery that makes us think, that makes us really open up the dialogues of what we know, what we should accept, what is okay, what is not okay, how far can you stretch the boundary, and how much more can you sort of do with what you have as a platform available to you in every capacity. So
definitely, and I think since we are in a room full of students, I would say young budding professionals, I think the craziest thing about what all of you here do is that you're dealing with lofty, artsy concepts, right? But you're dealing with several professionals and humans. So translating a lofty, artsy concept the way that you may have about this is what I want people to feel, this is what I need to provoke, and these are my thoughts, trickle it down to the photographer, the stylist, the makeup person, the hair person, the models. That in itself has its own journey, I feel, and I think the toughest thing perhaps for a student to figure out is how am I going to make this a professional process for myself? How am I going to get a job with my lofty ideas? How am I going to build a brand the way that you have on my belief system and how I want Indians to view things? And hell yeah, I don't want to wear jewelry, but who's going to buy that? These are really cool topics that I'm sure a lot of people are going to relate to. I just want to volley it to Mickey, because obviously you're dealing with a very new age magazine, right? So you're not even up against the legacy magazines. You're in your own little league over here that's being taken really well, especially with the young dynamic audiences. Do you feel like when you're building stories for them, it is a whole other ballgame and you're dealing with things that you've never had to deal with before?
Well, I've been in paper for 27 years, so I mean, I've really seen changes from when we would do everything by phone or, you know, fax machine, if anyone even knows what a fax machine is anymore. And, you know, digital and the internet has changed everything. But, I mean, really, as you said, we're telling stories. I mean, and what we consider a success is an image that excites people, gets people thinking. Even if someone hates something, I like that better than if they're bored by it, because boredom is death when it comes to what we do, I think. And it is complicated to deal with so many people. And for example, if like we all were doing a project together, it's hard. People who are legendary, I find, are easy to work with, but at the same time, they have such strong identities. And you, as a famous photographer, have a very strong identity. And if we're doing something, there's the question of when does it become paper's image and when does it become your image? And how do you maintain your identity while we get what we need? The same, and then we add in you, who's a nut and who like does your own thing. When you put that in, there can only be one captain on the ship on a certain level, so it takes a little bit of humility to be able to work with people. But that's when the real magic happens, though, I think. So it is, I think we all are in the same business of making images that people talk about. And young people see everything on their phone, so when we're thinking about a cover, even more so now than when the Break the Internet Kim Kardashian thing happened, we thought, what looks good on somebody's phone when they're seeing it on Instagram? Because that's how 70% of the people see it. So even though there is a print magazine, and that has a new life actually, because now very often fans who see it online then want a copy of it to own, as opposed to buying it on the newsstand. So there are different things that we have to be taken into consideration, but it's still always about making an incredible image that's showing somebody in a way they haven't been seen before. Also because so many celebrities just wanted, Deepika Padukone only wants her hair to look the way her hair looks. She doesn't want to do something radical with her hair, and I don't blame her. She's a gigantic international movie star, but I've seen that hair, and I don't care about that hair. I want to see some new hair. And just because that's interesting to me. So so there are a lot of challenges to what to do. That's why, to me, the dream celebrity is, like when we shot Priyanka, she said, I want to do something crazy. And people come to us often to do something crazy. And that's a dream to me, when someone's willing to do something that's unusual and not the same exact thing that you've seen them do all the time.
I just would like to add something. I think we live in a kind of a unique world with a lot of unique problems here. So, well, when I started, for 7.5 years, I haven't had any fashion photographer or stylist in beginning. So I want to add that when you decided that this is what fashion is and this is what celebrity is, so I didn't even have a celebrity for the longest time. And that's why I never had a showstopper celebrity. I think the idea of India in fashion, that is not penetrated to the last, to that audience. I think whatever happens between Mumbai and Delhi, we consider as fashion, which is very different than the Western world to the Eastern world here in India. So to me, it was very much important that I need to look at things that beyond what fashion people does. And anyways, what is a fashion contribution? Is Dainik Bhaskar is bigger than any of the fashion magazine, or how they influence? Are the only influences on the small group of the people who maybe study fashion or English medium school, but what about the rest of the population? We had 125 CR people in India. So I actually, little bit, maybe didn't look at it from a celebrity or stylist or a fashion photographer point of view. And that's exactly, I think, one of the photo, the color photo of my sister. I have nothing to pay, and I click myself. So that's how I took the camera in beginning. So it's an interesting story. Why I'm saying this, that you don't have to, guys, all the students, that you have to believe they has to have a stylist, or they have to have a makeup artist, or you have to have a hair or a celebrity. You can just all do it. You need a very strong idea. And the idea come from everything, from political, religious, current scenario was happening. Look at so much. The India is full of storyteller. The regionality. We have some 100, I don't know how many 100 languages, and 500 are wearing clothes and saris and hairstyle and the body type. We are full of storytelling. We need to tell the story to the world. And that's all I'm trying to say, that, you need to look in within that, how do we do that? Because if something is set over there, the trend, the next thing is a purple lipstick, I don't know, they're going to think about how's the Indian skin going to look with a purple lipstick, We need to see what purple means to us. So I'm trying to say is that don't blindly follow it, just question it. And I'm saying it again, Instagram and Facebook is not the end of the world. It's going to change soon. And then how do you relate it, and how do you sell your clothes?
I said the same about reality TV. I thought, it's just a fad. It's not the end of the world. It's still here 50 years later. But I think it's something that's amazing that you said, I think also, is that you didn't do fashion shows. And I said on this panel earlier, every fashion is so not progressive and is so not modern in so many ways. We do what we do because it's what everybody's always done. We have a celebrity on the cover because we've always had a celebrity on the cover. And the genius thing is when you just pull yourself away from that and say, okay, what's going to work for me? What is the best way to convey my brand identity or convey who I am? And most of the time, it's not a fashion show. I think 90% of people should not have fashion shows. Whether that means, one of the best things ever, I feel like this brand Rodarte did, an Instagram thing. I know you hate Instagram. But they shot their friends, who all were kind of celebrities or musicians or interesting people, wearing, I know, I'm kidding. They shot them wearing the new collection, and they released them over a day on Instagram. And they're amazing people, musicians and actors and stuff. The clothes are amazing. And that was money much better spent than a fashion show or a lookbook or a campaign or anything. And, they were brilliant to do that. And I think it's much better to do something that's not just the obvious thing that everybody does in order for you to stand out.
I love Instagram.
Is that the message you took from what I just said?
And I'm actually going to add to that also, when I spoke earlier about ethos. So if you understand his clothes, you'll understand his style of photography, you'll understand the lovely work Ashish has done for you, you'll understand the simplicity of it, the deconstruction of it, keeping it earthy, keeping it raw. That's what his brand stands for. So as a photographer, a person who's going to collaborate with him, it's very important to understand what his viewpoint is, what his inspiration is, why did he come up with what he's come up with, But understand a little more about the magazine, the designer. You've got to sort of work outward from within to understand what's around you, for you to be able to then add value to their brand. That's the reason that they've thought of you and brought you on board. The other thing I would like to also add, listening to the two of you, is that more often than not, as a photographer, you find your magic right in your own backyard. We tend to keep looking ahead. We can keep looking all over. Sometimes we just forget to look right behind us. Right behind us. What is it about you that you bring to visual imagery, to what you're communicating? So you don't lose that connect with who you are, what your values are, your family, your friends. And more so we see that happening now in terms of even fashion, where people are going back to using their friends or, keeping it deconstructed. So I don't think you need to keep looking forward. Sometimes you just miss out on what's right behind your own shoulders, So just be aware of that. So.
And I think just to add to that, actually, I was thinking the same thought, was that we're so obsessed and so concerned with constantly looking outward, that we lose our own identity, we lose our own purpose, we lose our own message. And I think collectively we have to realize that if you're in a team, we're working together, you have to understand what is it that he is trying to say first, what is it that then I can do, and what is it that inspires me from that message, and how is it then a team like a photographer would bring that message forward, and how is it that I have to be unafraid to speak my mind. Like, I'm not there just for a job, just because it's being paid or whatever. I don't care half the time. A lot of people kind of just get really irritated with the fact that I just sort of openly, vocally say whatever I have to say, because I'm just like, this is kind of ridiculous. Like, I mean, I understand you're selling a mango juice or whatever you're selling today, but do you believe in it? Like, do you really genuinely believe in holding this? Like, can I sell this microphone to you? Like, what is it that you believe in? Because how much do you lose yourself at the end of it, then there's no message. Then what is the purpose in doing of whatever it is that we're doing, and why is it that people are going to school? Why is it that people are trying to learn this whole process, and at the end of it, realize that you just end up getting so disappointed that you expected so much more of this glitz and glam or this whole sham or whatever it is, that the reality of it is that you have to be able to go back home at the end of the day and really just touch base with yourself and touch base with the fact that, like, okay, did I do an earnest job today? Did I do what is good? Did I do what is pure to me? And as long as, because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself, right? I mean, it doesn't matter.
I think it brings me to an interesting point, actually, because a lot of brands today, what they struggle with is being viral or being relevant, being emotional, being thought-provoking. And what ends up happening in that process is the individuality of that brand gets lost because they're trying to be the next big whatever campaign that just happened. And they're emulating so many other brands, and this whole process of referencing that we all do as creative people also kind of hinders that, right? Like, we're all referencing, but at the same time, we're like, okay, how much do we take from this reference? I know as a stylist, you probably get that a lot.
I would say that we don't have Indian fashion references. When I started the sari to
You'd be
shoot,
surprised. You'd be surprised how many references we get.
No.
The time is just like, this is the sari campaign we want to do. And
well, you have Raja Ravi Verma's or a lot of heritage vintage photos, but as in a fashion brand, we didn't have a references for Indian fashion. What is it?
Yeah.
So for that exactly, I had to struggle for it and you to create your own
Yeah.
language. And that's what my first point was.
Yeah, which I think it worked in your favor, right? Because you're kind of in this corner being like, I'm going to come from nothing and
Yeah.
provide my own representation, my own identity.
He's telling his
But
true
that's what
story.
I
Yeah.
said, that, you know, India is a storytelling and
Yeah.
there are, every state has the 3 part of the state and there are 7 states in Northeast. We know so little today. We know so little about Mizoram. Just having a one shoot in Northeast doesn't cover Northeast, what I'm trying to say. Ask the Northeast people, I mean, the people who live there. There are 7 states and Nagaland itself has so many tribes and languages. We know nothing about them.
Yeah.
We know nothing. It's going to take 200 years to tell your own story. I mean, and you do it in whatever way. I mean, you know it better because I can't. I mean, I know about Rajasthan maybe, but you know about your language better. And I think you can come up and do that.
Definitely, definitely. As people that have to face clients a lot, especially you two over here, I know that you guys get emails with references saying, hey, we want our shoot to look like this, and this is what we want our final pictures to look like, and this is exactly what I want my output to be. So how do you guys, as integrity-having creatives today, how do you deal with that? Where do you say, hey, actually, we're not going to exactly copy this mood board?
Thank God for Diet Sabya.
Indeed.
Everybody's on their toes now.
Yeah.
And listen, you know, we'll get there. You know, as Sanjay said. So when I work in New York, an ad campaign, I'm given an illustration of the campaign. It's never a visual reference of somebody else's. And what's interesting is I'm told on page number so-and-so of my physical portfolio, or page number so-and-so, image number so-and-so on my website, would be the reference points. So the reference points, the reason that I would like to imagine that I was commissioned, because there was something about my work that inspired them to commission me as opposed to the other people they you know, were considering. So we still have that issue here. And I just use Sabya's name now, Diet Sabya, whoever that is. Now, you have to say that to clients because it's very easy, especially when you have an ad agency in the middle, you have other creative people in the middle. They've presented something to a client. A client is now fixated on that image. You know, how do you get them away from that image?
Yeah.
And that becomes extremely difficult. You know, unless you're driving the car yourself, if you're a designer shooting, or a magazine is clear about the perspective. But in mainstream brand advertising, it's certainly a tough line here. We deal with it. And eventually, you know, you've got to be diplomatic and let the client see your way. You know, make sure that when you're on the shoot that you're doing whatever that they've not imagined.
Yeah.
You know, which takes them away from that stupid visual that's been torn out of some magazine and presented to them. So.
But the unfortunate thing is that they're stuck on that, right? Like, I mean, as a newer, younger stylist in this industry, I know so many times that they just shut down the idea. They don't care. They don't think you're valid enough yet to a certain point, unless you have a certain integrity or a certain value or a certain point. There's so many times they're just like, this is the mustard sweater we want to wear. And you're like, there is no mustard sweater. Where do you want me to get this from? What is it? Like, what do we do about this? And, or this is exactly how we need it to be. It's a reference image. This is what we want to copy. And it's just like, guys, like, then why have you hired me? Just hire somebody who is able to just recreate it. Get a tailor, get somebody else. Don't waste my time and don't disrespect us. Like, and take a risk. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen if you just sort of allow that risk, that open space to happen. If we are looking for navy blue jackets, there are 1,001 navy blue jackets, but do I like the one with the printed lining inside? Yeah, because I think it might add something to it because there's dynamic movement in the script or whatever it is. And if you can't sort of respect the professional's opinion on the matter, no matter how young or old or established, you get jaded over time, or you get really turned off, or you're really excited, or you're overexcited. I think it's important to find that balance. But if you don't keep trying and don't keep doing and don't keep pushing, then there's really no point in all of it, right? I mean, then why are we doing what we're doing? Then might as well just get 5 robots to do what you need to do.
Absolutely. And I
And
think
also the thing is, sorry to add to that, is you got to understand, all of you are young, you're going to start out somewhere. It's sadly, you know, 80% business, 20% art when you are commissioned, and you can't forget that because this is not, you're not on your own time. You know, you do your creative stuff, you present your stuff to the world, and you hope that people admire your work, appreciate it, and you get commissioned. But once you get commissioned, you've got to respect that space that now you've transcended into a commercial space where there is a purpose for the brand, there's a purpose for a magazine, it needs to sell, and artistic egos need to be laid to rest, work as a team, and be convinced when you come on board to do something. And if you believe in what you believe in, then the other person can more easily see your point of view.
Right. I think it's about that time that we have to address the elephant in the room that you've already kind of hinted at, Instagram, right? So I think a couple years ago, there were legacy institutions that would decide the storytelling that we would be seeing, that we would be looking up to, that we would try to relate to. But today, obviously, the floodgates are completely open. Everyone is allowed to create content. Everyone is allowed to collaborate. Everyone is working on things and putting it out into the internet, right? So people are creating these stories visually, day in, day out, probably on enormous proportions. So I would say, just as a photographer, do you feel like you're dealing with a bunch of, not amateurs, but just a whole different horde of photographers now that are digital photographers, content creators, putting out stories? So where do you kind of find the new balance of things now?
I think, excuse me, in a certain sense, it's great because Instagram allows you to do that, where there's a rawness to it. If you see visual trends now, the younger generation are more spiritual. I'm seeing the background of it. Sure. Are more aware of the brand, aware of what they stand for, and creating visuals on your own, where you are in charge of your own creativity, is not a bad thing. It's just, how does that sort of transfer into a commercial space in terms of, technically, there's one thing taking a picture with a camera, but does it transcend into a hoarding? Does it do what it needs to do? Does it sell what it needs to sell? You have the other extreme. Some of you might be familiar with the Guess campaign, which ran in the 80s and ran in the 90s. You couldn't even see the clothes. Ellen von Unwerth, she's a wonderful photographer, her style of shooting is, high grain imagery. Like, where's the clothing? But that sold a feeling of that California girl or whatever it was, which worked for them. So to create work, which everybody's creating these days, it's great. The potency of creative work. I see so many people's Instagram. They don't have to be photographers. They're just people who are telling you about their lives, the visual stories. What's around them. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's inspiring to see things that don't belong in the professional space, for example. So.
Awesome. I think since we are in a room filled with students and we have such an esteemed panel over here, we would love to take some questions specifically perhaps to do with creating authentic visual storytelling. So if we would like to have any questions at all. Yeah, sure. You may have to speak a little loud, so.
What's the difference between creating a image for a brand or for a magazine? I think creating an image is the same, really, in a different way. For both of them, you kind of have to think of what the identity is that you're going for and then try to stick with it. I mean, for a brand, they will pay you lots of money, I hope, and for a magazine, unfortunately, we don't pay you tons of money. But I think it's often an older fashion brand has more of a history and a heritage that you have to take into consideration, which some brands do, and some brands don't. If you look at Balenciaga and Gucci, what they are now, they have very strong identities, don't really have anything to do with who they were historically speaking, which maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. But yeah, I think it's really just all about kind of a good idea and an idea that sort of fits the general identity of what the magazine or the brand is that you're doing it for.
So you, as a creative director for a magazine, do you get to play around with the brand imagery when you put it on a magazine piece?
Possibly. I mean, when we do things with brands sometimes, like we just did a story with Chanel, and something they wanted to do was show that Chanel could work for cute young girls as opposed to old rich ladies. So were thought of as sort of a young, cute brand of a magazine, so we worked on that together. And I'm the editorial director, I'm not the creative director, so I am involved, but I'm not the person who really necessarily does the art direction and a lot of those things. But so yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. Great, do we have any more questions in the audience? Anyone?
Don't be shy.
Yeah, it's only like the best panel ever to ask your questions to. Yes, sure. I think we're going to try and get you a mic this time. Just a second. I think it's the lady in the green.
Hi, everyone. So my question is to Mr. Parekh and Mr. Sanjay. So we spoke about having an identity of the brand and selling that, like looking more into the backyard and not just outside all the time. So the question is that when you're established brand, it's an amazing thing to do. But when you start off, how am I supposed to sell my identity, which I know, but what if I don't have buyers for that? So I will take, say the initial time, say a couple of years, or maybe 3 years, or 10 years if I'm unlucky. So how do you sustain that? Like, how do you balance your personality along with having a commercial aspect? Because at the end of it, if I'm a designer, if I'm creating something, I need to sell it as well. So that's the question.
So I definitely, I understand what you're saying. There's no buyer. As I would say that I also didn't have any buyer when I started. And I didn't even start with any fashion week. So I didn't even get the platform to show my work in fashion week. I've only done 4 fashion shows in last 11 years. So what I think whenever you start your brand or anything you do creatively or business, I think you definitely want to say what kind of vacuum you're filling in. What is it, what you're going to do? Am I making another pink or red sari, or am I making another red gown to the versus orange brown gown, or I'm making parrot or something? So is this, I think that's the inner question that what are you going to do it? I thought of that I want to change the perception of the handloom sari where it shows very bhanji or auntie-like, and I wanted to say this very cool garment, and tradition has nothing to do with that. Tradition is not modern, so I didn't agree with it. So and then I started showing my belief to that, and then you show in photos or communication. I'm sure the people who are agreement with you, they come and share your views. And that's what the share, they believe in your product, where it's coming from. So I don't think so that you sell my story. I think you have to see what story you have unique yourself. Maybe you make a shoes, which you can, the leather you can wash it, or you can make a shoes or a chappal, or you can make a sandal or a heel. So I don't know if you can create some product like that, and you create a versatility and you show it that way. So it's just that I think that it's a question, start before what is the idea to communicate, and then you communicate, right? So the idea, what is to communicate, if you decide that and you're very clear on it, then it's easy to communicate, what I'm saying.
Lovely.
So from my perspective, I'm curious, what is it that you do?
So I'm a student currently, so I'm about to finish my 1-year diploma in fashion designing at FAD.
Okay. If I believe I got your question right, it's like, how do you sustain yourself? How do you bring about attention to people? It's interesting because when I moved from Los Angeles to London, totally different markets, and obviously, fear envelops you. You're getting into a new market. And I started altering my work. I started showing stuff that I hadn't planned to show until, someone suggested to me and said, go back to the drawing board. Don't forget why you came here. And the moment I did that, I realized when you start looking at other things, I was just saying to someone earlier that I see what I do as not competitive to other people. It's like golf, that's the golf course. You're not competing with the 4-ball. You're really playing the course. You're playing yourself. So think about that. Think about just improving yourself. Think about, being inspired by the things around you, and what you believe in. Stick to that. That first thought, that original thought, usually turns out to be the right one. And of course, in everything we do, there's luck involved, there's timing involved, but I guess when that luck comes, you've got to be ready for it, right? You can't be at that point scratching your head and that moment just goes by. So you're always prepared. I really don't believe that I don't think I will ever say that I've reached a certain point in what I do. I think I still have lots to learn. I learn from people a quarter my age who come on board, interns or people my crew or a stylist's assistant or someone. It's just, we're in the business of communication, right? So there's enough just around you that inspires you, and keep that belief. Keep that belief and doors open up. And for example, this platform that we are on right now is not just about becoming a stylist. Because I was trying to understand, this is the first time I'm here, so I was trying to understand also where they started, I was talking to them earlier. And it's wonderful because it's not when you say that, you've gone to design school, that's it. It might just be limited to becoming a Sanjay. There are many other avenues to which you could go. So, keep that mind open. Sometimes you might have to swerve a little bit and go back to where you wanted to go. It's a journey.
I think the most important thing you could do also is you need to know what your identity is, because Raw Mango, for example, that is very clear what his identity is. And I so often meet students who, when you ask them who's your customer, which I know you probably hate that question, they have no idea. They talk shit. They don't know what they're talking. Like, they don't really have an idea of who they are. Like, what are you? Why should people buy your clothes, and why are you even doing it? Like, you really need to know what your identity is, and then it sort of, I think, becomes more clear what you should do and how you should present yourself, because you'll really know who you are. You know what I mean? So it's hard at the beginning to kind of really know who you are, but it's important to find out, I think.
And I think it's really important to just do everything. I mean, I have done everything. I have designed, I have sold things, I have worked in a store, I have worked as a store manager, as business side of things. I have now accidentally become a celebrity stylist. It was not something that was ever on my path. My mother is here, and you can ask her that for sure. So it was not an agenda-driven thing. I was like, you have to be able to really expose yourself thin. You just have to put yourself out there, put yourself at risk. You have to be able to pick yourself back up when you fall. I have tried designing 3 times. I have failed every time. I peaked when I was in high school making clothes by the local tailor. After that, I've not made it a business because it's not my forte. But by doing and trying and trying and trying, I found a place where I really enjoyed myself. Am I at the peak of my career? No, of course not. But at this point, I am really fortunate. But at the same time, I still look outward. Am I still trying to be in an editorial space? Because does it give me joy? So remember why it is you're doing what you are doing. Because if you cannot remember that, then there's no point in doing it at all. So.
Definitely. And I think, just to add on to your point, there's a reason why you guys decided to be creatives. We're not trying to be investment bankers, so we've already thrown money out the door, right? So we may as well just do things that really fuel our fire and hope to God that it works. And I think something that you 4 men do so well is that you don't treat your audiences and your consumers as audiences and consumers. You're dealing with them as people. You're humanizing the process. You know that you're dealing with feelings at the end of the day, right? So I think that's really worked for you all, and you've created such a name for yourself. And this is truly quite a tastemaker panel. So a round of applause for them, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.